Noise. Tan Talk. Entertaining and informative radio for the Sunshine State.
Come on in, sit right down. Keep your hands up, keep your chin down. Shut the door. Time to go with Randy Harris and Knockout Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, Knockout Radio with Randy Harris is about to start. So get ready for the best MMA talk, games, interviews, prizes, and surprises anywhere. For Knockout Radio, I'm the voice, Ray Flores, and now here's Knockout Radio.
Hey-o. Hey, everybody.
What is going on, everybody? Back in our home studio. A lot of things going down. A full 3 hours planned, 3 cool interviews. But it's a new day. The Coco, that would be Matt, becomes the Coco today. So you are
down the line.
You are now the Coco. And let's welcome to the show, to Knockout Radio, my old friend back in the day, Mike Straka. Mike, what's up?
Not much. Thanks for having me, man. I'm really excited about this endeavor. I've always been a fan of yours, Randy, and not so much Matt, but, you know.
That didn't take long.
Well, to be a star, you got to be equally hated on both sides.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, but let's be honest. That's correct. But you're only hated. There is no good on your side.
It's about 50-50 in this studio.
Matt, trust me, Matt and Randy can tell you, I've been hated a lot, so it's okay.
That's why we get along.
If you're not doing something noble, you
That's right.
Right? Got to make some waves. So.
Yep.
So, first and foremost, let's you tell people, I know about you from back in the day, early UFC, well, middle UFC.
Yeah.
The early UFC is me, your middle UFC, and now the new UFC. Let everybody know a little bit about you.
Well, I was a VP and executive producer of Fox News Channel, and I started my own show called Fox Fight Game, where I started covering mixed martial arts. And the funny thing is, Roger Ailes was the CEO of Fox News, and he told me, Mike, well, I'm not covering this cage fighting stuff because, he was friends with John McCain. So I did my first interview with Randy Couture, and Randy was so eloquent and so smart and so thoughtful during this interview that I sent it to Mr. Ailes, and he goes, are they all like this? I go, yeah. He goes, okay, you can cover it. So I always tell Randy, I attribute my whole MMA career to that one interview, because imagine if I interviewed, say Tito Ortiz or, early, or when, Chuck falling asleep, on a set. That would have not gone well with Roger Ailes. Randy was the perfect person for me to interview first. And then from there, I went to HDNet. I hosted Fighting Words with Mike Straka, which was a great show. I love that show. Wrote a book based on that show, too, called Fighting Words. And then Spike TV's MMA Uncensored Live, and that was cool, too.
You did TapouT, too, right?
Oh, TapouT Radio on Sirius.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I miss Charles.
Yeah, me too. God. Yeah, I miss all the guys. I haven't seen Punk Ass or Scrape in a while either. So I do miss those guys a lot. They were great. They were so great to me. And what a story they have, too. We don't have to get into that. It's been rehashed over and over again. But, I wrote a biography about Ronda Rousey, my book, another book called Fighting Words.
The wrestler.
I've never seen her in WWE.
Really?
Yeah. I don't remember the last time I watched WWE, I think I don't even know who was the champion.
Well, it would have had to have been Roman Reigns, because he's been champion for like 42 years.
No, it was before then even. It was before then. Like Ted DiBiase, I think, was champion.
I saw him in the Atlanta airport. So just to let everybody kind of know how this played out. So I've known Mike for a long time, and then all of a sudden Mike got out of media and wasn't doing the UFC and all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden I find out through the Book of Face, Mike lives in Tampa.
Yeah.
So you moved to Tampa. Doing some other things.
I moved to Tampa to host a radio show.
Right, on this network?
Yeah, no, I hosted a show.
Oh, before then, and then came over.
Yeah, it was WW whatever.
Yeah, we don't need the help.
Yeah. And I did that show for like 3 months, and the guy who owns the station and I didn't get along very well, so we parted ways. And then I did another show, which I did on TAN, called The King and the Cop with Jimmy Leyritz. That was pretty cool. But, things don't, the media world is fickle. You're in one day, you're on top one day, and then you're forgotten about. It's like fighting. You could be the best fighter in the world. You lose one fight, and he sucks. So it's the same with media.
Well, it is the same with media. I know a particular person who sits in on a radio show who's been fired numerous times, and he won't leave. I can't get rid of him.
Well, here's how I'm going to stay longer. So going back to the TapouT story, what was it like back then when they started legendary of selling T-shirts and merchandise out of a van? Out of a trunk,
yep.
Kind of like the
blocks away,
like the rappers used to do with their demo tapes and CDs, like at the street level. And what it became, and how big of an influence they had in the early UFC, MMA infatuation with the world.
Well, they were the first people to really put money back into MMA. So they were sponsoring fighters before fighters even had a platform. They were giving away T-shirts and maybe paying a guy maybe $50 to walk down into the cage with the TapouT T-shirt on. But it was really the first season of The Ultimate Fighter.
Well, welcome to Knockout Radio.
Thank you.
I wanted to bring you a gift.
Why does he think that's going to keep him around longer?
Because he just said it before he didn't like me, but now I gave him a TapouT original gift.
And it's a triple extra large. It'll fit me perfectly. Thanks a lot.
Well, I mean,
it's a backhanded slap.
I'm like 5'2".
But let's look at but back then it was all about the biggest guys and the biggest bodybuilders. It's not what it is today. Weight classes.
I'll bet you I know who he bought this from.
I used to tell Punk Ass and Scrape and Mask, I said, if you're wasting your money on all of these fighters, you only need one fighter to sponsor. I go, who? I go, Roy Nelson. Like, why? I go, because it's going to be the biggest logo.
Yeah.
You're not going to miss that logo walking up to the cage. And then Punk Ass goes, you know what, Mike, you got a point.
So back in the day, Charles and I, obviously very good friends as well, I used to always try to get him on the show, and he's like, Randy, we haven't made it yet. If we make it, I'll come on the show. He used to send us product, and we would always do this. And I've told this story before. So I'm in Chris Hovand's house. He used to play for the Bucks, and then went to St. Louis for his final year. Started with the Minnesota Vikings.
Name dropper.
No, I need to tell you that for the story. So I'm in Chris Hovand's house, and his neighbor comes over. His next door neighbor comes into the house and says, Chris, you're never going to believe this. She worked for Nike. And she said, you're never going to believe this. We had a massive meeting last week about TapouT. We're talking about, I called Charles and he started to cry on the phone because he made it. Nike is now talking about possibly acquiring, possibly this, possibly that. And what a good dude. What an absolutely good guy.
When they first got into Champs, that was a big deal. Remember Champs Sporting Goods?
Huh?
And they were so excited about that because, the story about TapouT is when The Ultimate Fighter went off the air, that finale that with Forrest Griffin and Stephen Bonner fight.
Coaches Randy and Chuck.
Right. They had a huge uptick in orders, and they didn't have inventory to fill those orders. So they were getting all of these credit card orders, and the bank shut them down. So they were like, what's going on? Like, we need that money to buy product to fill the orders. And the bank's like, you have to prove to us that you have money in the bank before we let these orders go through. So that's when they took on another partner, because he was a music producer, and he had I think it was $1 million of a statement in the bank for month to month before they would let these guys sell T-shirts. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. It's like you finally make it, but then there's still more obstacles. You can't just collect that money and do what you got to do. There's still obstacles.
It's one of the things that I regret's not the right word. Obviously, we regret that Charles passed away, that Ryan Bennett passed away. Those are the two that come to mind that I wish they could see. What from the early days, what we all were involved in the early days, what the UFC and what MMA has become, and it's a shame that those two, among others.
Yeah, and when Mass died, he was producing the film called Warrior, and he was in Warrior. He was in Warrior with Punk Ass and Scrape, and he died during that filming. And that was such a great movie with Tom Hardy and Nick Nolte and Joel Edgerton. You saw Warrior, right?
No.
You didn't see Warrior?
He doesn't watch movies.
The MMA movie?
Like the Warriors, movies. Like
I've seen the Warriors, from the bottles.
Oh, I know. I know that movie, too.
It's only Warriors he's watching.
It's so funny. My friend one day, he's like, you see Warriors? I'm like, yeah, my friend produced it. Like, what? That movie came out in 1978. I'm like, oh, that movie. No, a different movie. Anyhow, I really would. And, they in the TapouT headquarters in California, they built a movie studio. Have you been there?
Yeah.
Remember the studio? Yeah, every chair had a TapouT logo. It was awesome, man. Mark Reinert was the guy they took on, the music producer. He produced a lot of Diana Ross songs in the 70s. He was like a disco guy. And I liked Mark a lot. But and then Jamie Salter came in from Authentic Brands Group, and he bought TapouT. And then, they ended up in JCPenney and Kohl's. And I think it really hurt the brand. And then,
it definitely did.
Yeah. And then, I think Mask would have never stood for that.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And I remember I talked to people whenever early, you're in a TapouT shirt. Oh, are you a fan? No. Who's your favorite fighter? Fighter of what?
Right.
Because they started to get it at, the discount stores and whatever. And you're right, Charles. And as the group, the 2.5 of them, kind of like 2.5 Men, as we have a 2.5 men actress coming on here momentarily, Emmanuel Vargier, who played Mia. Yep. On 2.5 Men, and that's kind of what no disrespect to Scrape, but it was 2.5 Men. It was those two and Tim kind of got involved, right. And but yeah, dreadful. But we're going to reminisce a lot. Yeah. We're going to talk about last week as well.
Wait. Since we're on the TapouT story. Remember when Affliction first came on? Man, I used to wear those shirts on my show on Fox, especially Randy's shirt. Remember the two skulls facing each other with the helmets on? Yeah. That was the coolest shirt. I missed the Affliction shirt, but it kind of jumped the shark, just like Ed Hardy jumped the shark. If you wore an Affliction shirt, then people would make fun of you.
Right. I appreciate Affliction because that's where I met former President Donald Trump.
Yeah, I remember that. Affliction... what was the name of that card?
Well, it was Fedor Tim.
Yeah, but it was...
I don't remember the name.
I forgot. But wasn't there a Megadeth played before that?
Yeah.
That was so cool.
They did. And it's ironic that you mentioned Roy Nelson because I was in row 4 and he was in row 7. So he was sitting behind me at the Affliction. So, all right, a lot to get to. We're going to hit our first break. When we come back right after that, we will... I don't know where Emmanuel will be at, but she is coming next month to the Tampa Bay Comic Convention. We're going to talk to her. We're going to talk to Mike Perry, hour number 2, Ray Schultz, when we return. Hour number 3, sorry. When we return, more shenanigans. We'll be right back.